There's a battle going on for the soul of America. And it is a battle that is similar to the one that is going on in all the major religious traditions of the world. It is the battle of fundamentalism versus liberalism. Now, I do not use liberal here as a political term. We've come to use liberal as a term that is opposed to conservative. But I mean it in its original context as we used to define America as being a liberal democracy. Political liberals and political conservatives share a commitment to a liberal democracy. They just disagree over the best way to achieve that liberal democracy. Liberal, as I am using the term, is not referring to a political point of view, but, as the Oxford Dictionary defines it, a willingness to respect or accept behavior or opinions different from one's own, an openness to new ideas. The opposite of a liberal is illiberal. The opposite of liberal is a lack of willingness to accept behavior or opinions different from one's own. Someone who is illiberal is closed off to any and all new ideas. So the problem is not if you are politically liberal or politically conservative. The problem is not if you are religiously liberal or conservative. The real question is, are you open to new ideas? Are you willing to accept behavior or opinions different from your own? The real question is, are you a liberal? One can be a good American whether they're on the left or the right of political affiliation. One can be a good Jew or a good Christian or a good Muslim if they are on the left or the right of their religious affiliation. But one cannot be a good American if you are not willing to accept behavior or opinions that are different from your own. One cannot be a good Jew, a good Christian, or a good Muslim if you cannot tolerate disagreement or difference. I argue all the time with my Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox friends, but there is no arguing with the Haredim, with the ultra-Orthodox, as they do not tolerate any difference in opinion. I argue with my friends who are more and less politically liberal than me, but there is no arguing with those on the far left or the far right, because for them there is no tolerance of any difference in opinion. Those on the extremes like their religion and their politics neat. They do not tolerate uncertainty well. The constant haggling and debating, the arguments over fine and at times what seems like minutia, seems to be problematic to those who are more comfortable in a world of clear and certain right and wrong. When there's a problem, they want a solution. When there's a question, they want an answer. So the basic attitude of those who are illiberal is one of impatience. You and I have a very different approach to the world. We love the wrangling and the argumentation. We love the questions and the debate. Fundamentalists love answers, and we love questions. That is why fundamentalism was, for so long, not a very Jewish way of looking at the world. From the very first Jew, Avraham Avinu, who challenged God himself by asking, will the judge of all the earth not do justly? Through Moshe Rabbeinu and Rabbi Akiva and Moses Maimonides, right down to our own day, we Jews were always, liberal. In Judaism, we lived for the challenges, for the questions. Answers, they were merely the occasion for more questions. The Torah is God's law, the answer to all our questions. No. The Torah is God's law, but it is merely the occasion for a host of new questions that necessitated the Mishnah, and the Mishnah necessitated the Gemara, which gave rise to the codes, which gave rise to the responsa, a process that continues to our very day. We need to look no further than this week's Torah reading, Parshat Chayei Sarah, for a case study in how to be open in one's approach to life. Abraham is beset by many questions, and he has few answers. The Midrash states that Avraham Avinu was tested by God 10 times and that he proved himself up to all of the challenges. In Parshat Lech Lecha, Avraham is told by God to leave his land, leave his home, leave the land of his birth, to journey to an unknown destination that God would reveal to him when he arrives. Why? Good question. No answer. When he arrives in the land, he's confronted with a famine. Now, why did God have him leave a land of plenty to come to a land of famine? Good question. No answer. God promises Abraham that he will be the father to a great nation, that his offspring will be more numerous than the sands on the seashore or the stars in heaven. And meanwhile, he's 100 years old, Sarah is 90, and they do not have one child. How is that possible? Good question. No answer. Finally, miracle of miracles, they are blessed with a son at their advanced age, only to be confronted by the Akedah, God's incredible demand that Abraham take the one son, his only son, his beloved Isaac, and offer him as a sacrifice. Why? Very good question. No answer. In this week's reading, Sarah dies, and Abraham has the responsibility to bury his wife, his lifelong companion. And imagine Abraham's frustration when he was promised by God that this entire land would be his, and meanwhile, he is nearing the end of his life, and he comes to bury his wife, and he does not own 4 square. He does not own enough land for a burial plot. Abraham is embarrassed and belittled as he has to seek permission from a neighbor to purchase a cave to bury his wife. Why? Good question. No answer. It's not easy to live with uncertainty. Abraham was a model for living in an uncertain world. Today we have little tolerance for the kind of questions and doubts that he was able to live with all of his life. Oh, maybe we could have passed 1 or 2 of the tests that Abraham passed, but at some point along this long road, we would have turned to God and said, look, enough is enough, God. All I get from you are promises. Why should I persist? God, give me one good reason to continue believing in you. There are only 2 religious options for those unwilling to live with uncertainty, for those who demand answers: atheism or fanaticism, complete and total faith or no faith at all. Faith was introduced to the Western world by Avraham Avinu. Remember, he was the very first Jew. He had no precedent to refer to, no religion to guide him. He was figuring this out as he went along. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, that would all come later. First, there was only Avraham. Now, clearly, God existed long before there was an Abraham, but Abraham was the first to explore what a relationship with God could and should mean. And what emerges from his story is that in an uncertain world, a relationship with God means neither acceptance nor rejection, but struggle. Judaism has always been about the struggle, about the wrestling with God, like Jacob wrestled with the angel. I have an easy time talking with liberal Christians, and I have an easy time talking with liberal Muslims, and yet it's so difficult talking to fanatical Jews. Why? Because the liberal Christians and the liberal Muslims are struggling with their faith just as I struggle with mine. Struggle for the fanatic is a sign of lack of faith, and lack of faith is the worst sin for a fanatic. I have a friend who was thrown out of an ultra-Orthodox yeshiva because he asked too many questions. For me, there is never such a thing as too many questions. I get nervous when someone has too many answers. Our questions spur us on. They ignite our imagination. They fire our indignation. The reason I get along so well with my Orthodox and Reform friends and my Christian and Muslim friends is that we are defined not by our common answers. We have very different answers, but by our common concerns and our common questions. We wrestle with the same things. This approach is not in fashion in contemporary America. We want answers, and the sooner the better. Look around the corporate table of any major company, and you tell me who will be more successful. The person who asks the difficult questions, or the answer man or woman, the one who's quick to solve the simple challenges of corporate life. Follow your children in school. Which child would be more successful as a student in today's educational environment? The one who poses the challenging questions, or the one who tests well? The one who can master the material in short order, answering the questions quickly? Who will survive in the contemporary political environment? The yes man who says whatever the leader, the president, wants him to say, or the one who challenges and questions? Even in the realm of religion, look at the types of religion that are popular in our contemporary environment. They are the ones that offer the quick fix and the simple answers. Fundamentalism is in because it promises clear, precise, and simple answers to life's most complicated questions. One of the most popular sections of today's bookstores is the self-help department, books that promise simple and quick fixes to whatever ails you. But how many of you have ever read Who is Man by Abraham Joshua Heschel, or Heschel's collection of essays entitled The Insecurity of Freedom? Why have so few read Heschel's books? Because they ask questions rather than offer easy answers. They challenge us to wrestle with issues and confront profound questions, and we have little patience for the hard work that such a process entails. We just don't know how to live with unanswered questions. Why did God remain silent during the Holocaust? Why are women treated unequally in Judaism? Why aren't we moving even faster towards rectifying that inequality? Why doesn't traditional Judaism embrace homosexuality as an alternate lifestyle? Why can't I eat whatever I want to eat as a modern Jew? And God forbid the rabbi doesn't have an answer right away. 20 seconds or less, Rabbi, I'm waiting. And if we don't get our answer right away, we leave our faith behind and move on. Maybe some other enterprise will give us the answers we demand. And that's why fundamentalism is on the rise, even within Judaism, because it gives us quick, simple answers we desire, no matter that they may be the wrong answers. Yes, no, 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 yes. There, are you happy? I fear that for too many of you, that is precisely what you are looking for. I fear for the future of liberal democracy, and I fear for the future of liberal Judaism in an increasingly illiberal world. Abraham, like many modern Jews, could have easily decided that the game was not worth the candle. On the one hand, God had given him no end of promises, yet his reality was one of constant uncertainty. But he persisted, and the world was a better place because of his persistence. We too are constantly facing challenges to remain firmly committed to our religious tradition. We live in a world where answers are hard to come by, in areas even more difficult than selecting which position between two is right. We today, like Abraham of old, have two choices. We can pursue the quick fix, the simple answer, or embrace the difficult questions and learn to live with wrestling and the challenges they entail. Count me as a follower of Abraham. I believe in the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah. And God said to Jacob, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Yisrael, which means to struggle, for you have struggled with God and man and triumphed. I don't know about the triumph part, but sign me up for the struggle. Shabbat Shalom.